and welcome to The Federal. This is The Federal's latest episode of Worldly Wise, a weekly video that looks at all sides of a trending international issue. India's subdued response to the US President Donald Trump's recent dramatic moves, including the Venezuelan kidnap of President Maduro, has attracted considerable media attention. This arrest has reopened a global debate on whether Donald Trump is reshaping the world order or simply accelerating its breakdown. From Latin America to Greenland, from oil to strategic minerals, Washington's actions are raising questions about power, legality, and intent. To unpack what this moment really means for global geopolitics, the Federal speaks to its consulting editor K.S. Dakshinamurthy, who closely tracks international power shifts. So, thank you for joining, and let's directly go to the questions. So, India has avoided strong positions on several recent global conflicts. In our world moving toward force driven geopolitics, what challenges and choices does this moment pose for India's foreign policy and strategic autonomy?
India's foreign policy clearly is a policy of balance. So, and some, in a situation like this, where it is indefensible, where you can't help but criticize Donald Trump for his actions in Venezuela and his, a threat to take over or occupy or buy out Greenland. The what is happening is that he's crossing several red lines. So it is something that the rest of the world has criticized. You have Russia, you have China, all of whom have, condemned the U.S. aggression. Now, India too, obviously, will be expected to do something similar, but it has not. What it basically shows is that India follows a policy of balance. So, India is constantly trying to balance its options as far as the world is concerned. So, what typically happens is that India would, what I mean is, for instance, India also has direct stakes in Venezuela, and the ONGC has certain interest in Venezuela. India also gets oil from Venezuela. It's probably decreased now, but still, India was one of the consumers of Venezuelan oil. So, but then in the overall scheme of things, India logically should have not been very happy with what the US has done, but it has not. That is also because India also has heavy stakes as far as the US is concerned. It also has stakes in Venezuela. And similarly, in the past, it had stakes with Russia. It has also has stakes with the US. So India is constantly trying to balance its one country versus the other to ensure that its interests are not affected. So in the case of Russia, we saw that the import of oil from Russia angered Donald Trump, and then he imposed punitive tariffs on India. So what it also goes to show is that India is also in some ways vulnerable to the actions of the big powers. India is not had become strong within itself, like China, for instance. China can stand up to its own principles, its own positions quite strongly and with a lot of effect. That is because China knows that the US also depends on it, and it can't be without China. So for instance, Trump has not imposed any punitive tariff on China, even though China is buying oil from Russia, in fact, probably more than India. So as far as India is concerned, what it basically shows is that there is the balance that that India's foreign policy reflects is not coming from a position of strength. It's coming from a position of weakness. So this is something that we have to accept, and it also shows that it's a difficult, or it's a tough call that the Indian foreign policy mandarins or bureaucrats have to take. So the Modi government is unable to really come out exactly what it thinks when it comes to all these big powers and their geopolitical equations. India is probably fourth rate only on Pakistan. There's no other country, against which India can, very freely criticize. I mean, that's what you see as far as this is particular issue is concerned. It is also it is not something that happened just now. It's been like this for a long time. I would, in fact, almost for the last 7 decades, India has been doing this balancing act, and even in the future, I don't think there is going to be any dramatic change that one can expect unless there are some fundamental changes that happens within the country, because foreign policy is an outcome of the country itself. So how strong the country is within itself, its economy, its people, its politics, and et cetera, et cetera, with all that is reflected in its foreign policy. So the weakness in the within India is reflected in the kind of balance that India is forced to adopt.
So much of the global commentary frames Trump's actions as the emergence of a new world order. So, is that what we are seeing? Genuinely a new world order, or is it a continuation of older patterns of US power stripped of diplomatic language and restraint?
I wouldn't call it emergence of a new world order. What I would say is that it is testing the existing world order. It's more like what Trump is doing is testing the existing world order. For example, the US has always intervened in Latin America. It's not something new. What the US has done in Venezuela is not new. It's been happening for the last nearly 100 years, in fact, on various, across various countries. In the US has intervened, but the US has not intervened so directly. So it has either acted through local proxies, or it has threatened governments, and it has created an internal kind of a turmoil, or sometimes the CIA has been in the background and it has triggered a coup. So there are many ways by which it has done, but this is the first time that the US has actually entered a country and kidnapped its president, its sitting president, and then so this is something new. And what it basically shows is that uh, this is a new line that Trump has crossed. So, in that sense, what he has done is he has redrawn the lines of international sovereignty. So, countries are very, very particular about their sovereignty, their independence, and their right to act freely of their own free will. So, what Trump has basically done is he has gone in and he has directly threatened, or he has attacked Venezuela's sovereignty. So, what this shows is that the fear is that this will pave the way for other big powers to do exactly the same. So that is why people are also now talking about China, because China has for long wanted Taiwan to reunite with the mainland. Before the Cultural Revolution, Taiwan was very much part of China. So during the Cultural Revolution, during the Communist Revolution, the the fleeing nationalists from China went to Taiwan, and that's how Taiwan is considers itself the original China and all that. So it's a long history there. But as far as today is concerned, China wants Taiwan. So there is a fear that China will one day invade Taiwan and take it back. So something like Trump doing to Venezuela will, the fear is that it will open the doors for something similar. So people are now comparing it with Putin and his attack on Ukraine. So what it basically shows is that now that Trump has done this to Venezuela, it in some ways validates, or it kind of justifies what the other big powers may want to do. So this is the fear. So he is not really a new world order is not coming. He's testing the old world order, and now he is openly asking, saying that he's going to buy out Greenland. Greenland is a semi-autonomous, or it's an autonomous province, and it is linked to Denmark. So it is part of Denmark, but it's got a certain autonomy. So Trump says that this is not possible, and he's going to force Greenland to join the US. Now, when Trump says something like this is another line that Trump is crossing, because what Trump is doing is he's threatening his own friends, his European friends in NATO, and he doesn't seem to care about the actions that he's committing. So this is what is alarming a large section of the world.
Okay. So you just mentioned China. Let's talk a bit more on that. So China is Venezuela's major oil customer and a key global rival to the US. How might Beijing read the Maduro capture as a warning or as a precedent or a provocation, especially in the context of Taiwan and other contested regions?
Yeah, so as I told you, for China, this becomes a kind of a precedent. So tomorrow, if for any reason China feels that it is time that Taiwan is back in the fold of China and it becomes part of the mainland or the itself. So basically, if it takes any kind of a aggressive move as far as Taiwan is concerned, it can always justify its action. Showing Venezuela as an example. Now, as far as Venezuela itself is concerned, um, for China, it is a what Trump has done is Trump is also, though he's talking about oil and buying oil and then taking more oil and using it for uh, his purposes plus the purposes of Venezuela. There is also this fear within the US that China was moving closer to Venezuela and that there was some kind of a tie-up, and the Maduro government was getting into a kind of an arrangement with China, where there was some kind of a give and take as far as oil and rare earth materials were concerned, and so it was kind of, in a sense, it was also a political threat for the US itself. So what Trump did was a reflection of that. So from that point of view, if you see, for China, this is definitely not a good it's not good development. But at the same time, China can't do much as far as Venezuela is concerned, because what the US does in Latin America historically is something that other countries are generally don't intervene or interfere. But then things are different now. So it has a direct, what Trump has done in Venezuela has a direct bearing on China, both for what China can do and also the direct immediate impact on China as far as the Venezuela-China relations are concerned.
Okay. The justification for US actions has shifted from drugs and migration to oil and critical resources. So, how central are energy, minerals, and supply chains to Trump's foreign policy decisions, particularly in Venezuela and wider Americas?
See, that is the thing about Trump. Trump is not just a politician. He's fundamentally a businessman. So, as far as Trump is concerned, he's looking at the world in a very transactional manner. So, for him, it's a question of buying and selling stuff. So, if you take, for instance, India, now he's upset also with India because India is not, signing is the agricultural, the trade deal with the US over the agricultural issues. Now, Trump wants the US to be able to sell its agricultural products in India, but India has refused for its own reasons. We'll not get into that now. But so he's very much upset with India because India is not cooperating. Right now, as we speak, of course, there is a negotiation going on. That is one thing. Or if you take China, now Trump threatened China with massive tariffs and punitive tariffs, even much more than India. But what has happened when the tariffs were announced? He let go China. He didn't include China in the tariffs. So China is not part of this punitive tariffs, though they import more oil than India from Russia. Right now, why is this? Now, this is because the US, Trump wants the rare earth material to be sourced from China, and he fears that China will block uh, rare earths from going to US if Trump imposes tariffs on China. So that is the hold that China has over Trump. So again, you see, Trump is acting like a businessman. So he wants, that nothing should come in the way of China US trade, while politically he would like to punish China, like the way he has done for India. So from India, it's not, there is nothing very, very valuable that the US is expecting. So he could afford to do that with India. So this, as far as Russia is concerned, again, he's trying to cozy up to Russia, and then he's also trying to force Ukraine to end the war. It's also again he's thinking like a businessman because the war is becoming expensive. The US is spending a lot of money on the war, and so he wants the war to end. So Trump is looking at everything like a businessman first, and then he's a politician. Now he wants to buy Greenland. See, even the terminology that he's using, he wants to buy out Greenland. It's not like he's not saying let's he wants the cooperation of Greenland with the US. Nothing like that. So he wants to buy. So even the terminology. So if you see, Trump is fundamentally transactional. He's a businessman, and that's the way he looks at the whole world. And this is what is completely changing the world order in some way.